Hey everybody, welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. I'm Kristi Brower, here with my sister, co-host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey Katie.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going, it's going well. I had the opportunity to spend some time with my kids in Boise over the weekend and get to be in
Yeah.
some gorgeous weather down there. So it's awesome,
Oh, I'm
actually.
jealous.
Zero complaints. How about you?
Good, really good. Also awesome weather here. It's been so
Yes.
nice. We've actually been walking outside. Our Rhonda and I like to walk. We have this circuit that's 1.25 miles that we walk, well, as often as the weather is good, and we've done it
Sure.
twice in the last few days. I'm thrilled.
Nice.
So fingers crossed this weather's going to stay. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think so. I mean, the forecast for the next 10 days looks like nice every day. And by
I
nice,
know.
we mean it's
Thrilled.
getting to be like 45,
Yeah.
maybe
Oh, yeah.
50.
Yeah. Seriously. Like 45 is what we've been walking in. But
Yeah.
45, sunny, blue skies, and no wind. I got to tell you, when you're an Idaho girl, that's just practically shorts weather.
Yeah. It's amazing. It really does.
It
Yeah.
is.
So we're loving it.
We are. I agree. Well, I am glad you had fun, and I'm glad we're getting sun.
Yeah.
This is our first case of the week. This is our Monday case. And this is a cold read for Katie. So Katie does not know anything about this case. This is how we do this. I'm going to present the case to her. I'm going to ask her to share her thoughts on what happened and give us her psychic read on the case. So I'm just
Sure.
going to give you the real bare bones of the case, and then after you give us your read, then I'm going to give you a little bit more detail,
Okay.
if that sounds good. So this is the case of Aliyah Nicole Wilson. Aliyah was born on August 4th, 1997 in Flint, Michigan. And she died on July 19th, 2020 in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
She was found hanging from her apartment balcony, hanging by the neck from a bedsheet.
Okay.
Her death was ruled as a suicide. The autopsy report, which is I have and is rather interesting, her neck is not broken, and her hyoid bone is also not broken. Like there's very little injury to her body. There really is no injury to her body except that she was hanged and that she has a bruise on her knee. Now, unfortunately, because Aaliyah had a history of bipolar disorder and suicidal thoughts, and potentially even a previous attempt, her death was not investigated by the police. It was immediately assumed to be a suicide. They didn't collect any fingerprints or evidence or anything from her apartment. They didn't question anyone other than the man who found her body, and he was the maintenance man in her apartment complex. He found her at 4:20 in the morning, and he hadn't been past that same spot for an hour. So he went by at 3:20. Her body was not there. Then at 4:20, her body was there. So there was only
Digital
about a one.
records. They didn't draw any digital records from her phone.
No records
Okay.
from her phone. There was no security camera in front of this particular balcony. Now, this balcony literally was right in front of her apartment. It was just steps from her door.
Wow.
Now, a few things to know about. Before her death, she had reported on social media that she had been assaulted by an ex-partner and that she was afraid for her safety.
Yeah.
She also had mentioned online that the police had been contacted multiple times, and her mother said that the police had been contacted about 10 times over the last year in relation to domestic incidents with this partner.
Right.
So Aaliyah's family is very upset about the way that her case has been handled.
Sure.
They are actively trying to get the Houston police to reopen and reinvestigate her case.
Yeah.
They don't feel that she killed herself. Now,
No, but so much evidence is now lost because they didn't bother to gather it in the first place.
right, right. Her mother believes because she was LGBTQ and
Mm-hmm.
Black and poor, that her case was completely ignored by the police. And apparently, according to the police report, the original officer that attended the incident, talked to someone from the homicide division, told them that he thought it was just a standard suicide, and that's why they did not investigate. I'm going to put some pictures of Aaliyah up here. These came from the Justice for Aaliyah Facebook page that's been started by her family. There is a GoFundMe.
Mm-hmm.
There's a petition. They're trying to get some help with this case because none of them believe that she did kill herself. Now,
Right.
I want us to take a little break. When we come back, Katie, I'm going to give some more information in the case, but I would like you first to tell us your read on what you feel happened.
Okay.
And then I'll give you a little bit more information about why the family does not believe that this is a suicide.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, and we're back. And we are covering the death of Aliyah Nicole Wilson, who died in July of 2020. And her family are very unhappy with the way that her case has been handled and feel that the Houston police have ignored a lot of information that might have indicated that Aaliyah did not die from suicide. So, Katie, why don't you first give us your read on what happened with Aaliyah?
Okay. So, and first, I want to say I've worked with a lot of suicide families over the years, a lot.
Yes.
And it's fairly common for people to just wonder, at least for a minute, did they really do this to themselves? And unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes, they did it to themselves. However, in this case, I don't believe that to be true. Like I said, I've seen it before where families go, yeah, but maybe, just maybe it wasn't her,
Right. It's a very natural response, of
Yeah,
course.
of course. And of course, it was this family's response too, because frankly, no one wants that to be true.
Right.
But I believe that, I believe this was exactly what it looked like. I believe that it was the partner and one other person. I think it started with just the partner who came to her place yet again to harass her. I feel like that person asked if they could come in and sit down or at least come in and talk to her for a minute. And I feel like I kind of feel like she said no at first, and they had kind of a scuffle at the door, and she eventually let them in.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like her phone is loaded with information and with evidence that could easily be used. That they just chose not to.
Oh, we lost you for a minute.
Oh,
You're
I can
back.
still, yeah.
You're back. Okay.
Okay. I feel like her phone is loaded with information, with evidence that they're just choosing not to see. I mean, what she put on social media is one, but I feel like there was so many text messages and threatening messages and info that would have easily been gathered. So I feel like this person came to her home yet again, wanting to talk, wanting to maybe apologize, whatever, some kind of a story. I still actually feel like maybe she was suffocated. Not by hands around her neck, but maybe. But I do feel like it was suffocation. It just wasn't jumping off the balcony. I am curious though about her toxicology report because that really hopped out at me too about what nothing in her system,
There
what was
wasn't
going
one.
with her. There wasn't one. Oh,
No.
of course. Yeah.
No.
See, I'm suspicious of that to be honest because I feel like maybe uh, there had been something given to her to kind of dampen her down or dumb her down. But I feel like eventually she stopped breathing. And that was the cause of death. Whether they put a pillow over her face. Again, I'm not so sure there was like the hands around her throat. What was around her throat, the hyoid bone wasn't broken. There wasn't a lot of sign of that. But I still think that's what happened, was that she was suffocated. Um, but again, I wish there was toxicology because I think there's a story to be told there too. I feel like after she died, because again, I don't feel like it was an intentional death. I feel like it was yet another attempt to harass her, to talk to her, to whatever, and that it evolved into this. I don't feel like they went there with the very intention of killing her. Uh, I don't know that that makes it better, really, but uh, I feel like after they killed her, they actually called another person to help them because they completely panicked and freaked out and didn't know what to do. And this was the conclusion that they came to, was to just try to make it look like a suicide. And this was the option that they chose. Obviously, it happened between 3:30 and 4:30. Well, the
The
faking of the
hanging of her
suicide.
body did.
Yeah, I feel like actually her death happened quite a bit before that, but they had called in help because they didn't know what to do and they were scared to death. And so it took a little time for this stupid plan to play out. But at any rate, I do feel like it's exactly what it looked like, except for that I feel like there was more than one person involved, like I said, of the disposal of her body. And so with that knowledge, we know then that at least two people know what happened to her.
Mhm.
And if the police would have, and still would, bring some people in for questioning, do a little bit more homework, I think this case could still be solved.
Mhm.
However, the complete lack of evidence because of the lack of gathering, it's really concerning. Because, yes, evidence on her phone, fingerprints, glasses in the house, there are several things that should have been picked up on that she wasn't there by herself. So, very sad and frustrating. That's what I've
It
got.
is. It is. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. So let me tell you what else we know. So next to her body, or on the stairs near her body, was her purse full of her general basic personal belongings, her keys, her phone, her cigarettes, some lipstick, and her shoes that were sitting on the stairs next to her purse. The bottoms of her feet were clean, even though apparently she would have had to have been walking around without her shoes if she had in fact jumped off the balcony hanging from
Right.
the sheet. She didn't have any other injury to her neck, and so it was pretty clear that there was only one bruise. And so that this is one thing that the medical examiners look for in a case like this is if if there was more than one ligature mark. There wasn't. There was only one ligature mark. So that tracks with what you say happened, which I think is pretty interesting. Her phone was in her purse. The police did take possession of her property, but there was no indication that they did anything with it other than return it to her mother, who
Mm-hmm.
had to come from Michigan to claim her body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the police officer who was originally on the scene took her keys and went into her apartment. He took a cursory glance around, didn't see a suicide note or any obvious signs of drug or alcohol use, and locked up the apartment and left. So the police did not search the apartment. So a few days prior to her death, her apartment had been broken into. Someone broke a window and got into her apartment. The police later told Aaliyah's mother that they had a witness saying that that was Aaliyah's ex that had done that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shortly after Aaliyah's death, like as in the same night or, within just a short amount of time, there was another window broken and a good share of Aaliyah's personal belongings were stolen.
Oh,
When Aaliyah's mother got there, this second window had been broken.
Mhm.
And she said that there was not a single piece of paper in that entire apartment. No receipts, no
Mm.
notes, no nothing. Like all of that had been taken. All of her clothing had been taken, and a lot of her other personal belongings were missing. So even if there was any evidence left that the police didn't bother to look at, somebody took
Right.
it all.
It was gone.
Also, the police didn't care that that happened. That didn't seem to indicate anything to them that this should be more, considered anymore as a crime. All of her bedding was missing. It is believed that the sheet that killed her came from her bed,
Right.
the sheet that she was hanging from. Something that was stolen from her apartment was all of the rest of her bedding. So there was a lot of messing with stuff.
Yeah.
And no one seems to care. The police don't seem
That's
to
a
care.
lot of stuff to carry out of an apartment without anyone seeing you.
Right? It is.
I mean, how do you haul out bundles of bedding and piles of clothing? I mean, how? Without someone seeing you do that?
Right. And maybe someone did see them do that. But as
They
far as
didn't
I
look
can
for
tell,
evidence. Yeah.
the police didn't care and didn't try. There's no trying in this case at all.
No.
Aaliyah's death was just conveniently named a suicide, and she was just discarded. That's what's happened here, which is wrong. And which is why we decided to take on this case, is because Aaliyah's life mattered.
Yeah.
And Aaliyah's family loves her.
Yeah.
And they have the right to know what really happened. And just marking her down as a suicide without even trying to find out if that was true or not is such an incredible disrespect to her and her life and to her family.
Yeah. Yeah, entirely. And to just write it off as suicide is so lazy. That is the laziest of police work.
Well, and
And
I
it's
mean,
so
think about
cruel.
it.
Yeah.
It is so cruel, because then it just basically blames the victim completely.
Yeah.
And puts them in a poor light because of the way that suicide is viewed in our society. So really, she neatly sat her shoes next to her purse, climbed up the stairs, and jumped off the balcony with a sheet tied around her neck. Does that sound like any? First of all, it's a very strange place to commit suicide, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's very public.
Extremely.
It's very, I mean, I would imagine that whoever did this knew that the guard came around once an hour. Don't you think? Because they had a pretty small window to get this done without getting caught,
Yeah, but if you have two people and you already have everything tied up and ready, you could make the toss over the balcony pretty quick,
You could. But the jump over the balcony did not break her neck.
Right, because they didn't, it wasn't a jump.
Yeah.
It was a
lower down.
A lower down. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they threw her. They couldn't because they didn't know if their knot would hold.
Right. Right.
That's the other thing about Aaliyah. I don't think she's strong enough to tie a bed sheet into a noose that would hold her.
That would hold her. She wasn't very far off the ground. It was only one story.
Yeah.
A very strange case, and obviously we have covered many cases recently in the missing and murdered Indigenous women cases that we've been covering, in which suicide is a very convenient solution for cases that law enforcement don't really care about and don't want to put much energy into. We've seen it over and over again.
Yeah.
Aaliyah was LGBTQ, she was Black, and she was poor. And unfortunately, just like our Indigenous sisters who are often in similar situations, nobody cares.
No.
Nobody in power cares. Her family cares very much.
Of course.
Her mother is fighting for her.
Yeah. In the last year of covering so many of these cases, one thing that we have come across so many times, and I've mentioned this several times, as probably one of the biggest surprises I've had in this work, is that the families of the victims are in the most helpless and vulnerable position because they are absolutely at the mercy of first police
Yes.
and then second prosecutors that will or won't take up their case.
Yeah.
I had some pie in the sky idea once upon a time that all of these cases would be investigated, that all murderers got tried, that all domestic violence was addressed. Like, and it's just simply not true at all. Our
No,
justice system is very, very broken.
it is. It is. It's very broken. And having worked in domestic violence as a social worker in the communities here where we live, I know that that's not the case here either.
Yeah.
It
So
just
no
isn't.
wonder, though, that I feel like her case could be solved even though a lot of that evidence is gone. The perp has the evidence.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I feel like if they
Well,
would search their apartment, they would find the evidence. I feel like it exists.
yeah, I feel like it does. Also, one of the things that the family has said is that there are members of Aaliyah's social group who know what happened.
Yeah,
That
I
that
believe
that
that.
that there are people who absolutely do know what happened.
Mhm.
One of the things that her mother discovered is that her Facebook contact email had been changed. So someone had logged into her Facebook account after she died, had viewed a bunch of her messages, and then had changed the login information so her mom couldn't get into
Wow.
it. And she had a lot of concerns about that, still does have a lot of concerns about that.
Yeah.
But none of these things were ever even looked at by the police because they didn't even care enough to make sure this really was a suicide.
Yeah. That's horrifying. And I'm
It
so
is
sad for her
horrifying.
family because
Yeah.
she did have a mental illness, but she was controlled. She was doing well. She would have been doing better had she not had this fool in her life, obviously. But,
Right. And she had said on social media shortly before this that there had been some violence in regards to this relationship and that she was afraid.
mhm,
How that was not enough to at least
trigger
do the
something. Yeah.
most cursory of investigations,
Or
you
the
know?
10 police reports.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
There was a neighbor who told Aaliyah's mom that the walls of the apartment used to shake from the fighting,
Uh-huh.
that it was major, but nothing was really ever done about
Mhm.
it as far as I can tell. What happened here is not right.
No.
And if you go to Justice for Aaliyah on Facebook, you can join the group there, and then there is a list of places where you can get involved to help encourage the Houston police to reopen this case and to look at this more deeply and to consider that maybe Aaliyah really did not kill herself. Maybe somebody killed her.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to support that and
That's
to encourage all of you watching and listening to go to Justice for Aaliyah, join the group, sign the petition, make a donation if you can, write to the Houston police, do whatever you need to do to try to help Aaliyah's mom
yeah.
to get some attention on this case. There's no harm in investigating it. This is the part I
No.
just don't understand. What is the harm in investigating?
Yeah.
Other than at this point, they eat a little crow because they should have investigated it in the first place. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously.
And to open a can of worms with so many other families who also would like their cases to be investigated that
Yes.
have been thrown away.
Yes.
And
And
we've mentioned this before, but this happened to our family
it did.
in Idaho, in Boise.
Mhm.
We had a cousin who we absolutely believe was shot and killed by an ex, and
Mhm.
they called it a suicide.
It did.
And the circumstances of it are absolutely laughable to think that he could have done it to himself.
Totally
Not to mention
ridiculous.
that he had no GSR on his hands.
Yeah. No, there
And
was no evidence whatsoever that he did it.
and they didn't even bother to swab her for GSR.
No,
Nothing. He was a felon. He was a problem, and they
nope.
didn't care.
They didn't
And
care.
that's as far
No.
as it went.
His death continues to be unresolved. Well, I mean, I guess, officially resolved, but we know it is unresolved. So we do understand what this feels like to some extent.
Yeah.
He
To some
surprisingly
extent. I mean, these
was a
guys, what
white
they've been
man.
through. Yeah.
But my concern here
Yeah.
is that a Black woman, Aaliyah, is especially at risk
Yes.
of losing justice for her case.
Mhm.
And that's what's wrong. So wrong in this
Yeah.
country. If Aaliyah had been a white girl, I will bet you $1,000 her case would have been investigated.
They would have.
If Aaliyah had been a white, straight girl, I think it would have been even more likely that her case would
Absolutely.
have been investigated.
You betcha.
And you consider that there had been a bunch of police, reports and calls from her apartment. And so maybe she was seen as a bit of a nuisance, which why calling for help when you're in danger is a nuisance, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And if you understand the cycle of domestic violence at all, then you should have a little understanding of why that happens with victims of domestic violence.
Yeah.
And if you don't, Houston police, then you need to get some education.
Right. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Well, dang. What a sad case.
It's a
What an
very sad case.
infuriating case, actually.
But we wanted to put our 2 cents to it and put it out there to all of our listeners. So please go to justiceforaaliyah.com, and it is, or Justice for Aaliyah on Facebook, sorry. And it is Aliyah, Aaliyah. Aaliyah Nicole Wilson is her name. Go to her group and see what you can do to help. Because the best thing that we can do in situations like this is get involved and speak up and throw our names and our intent behind the families of situations like this to try to give them some kind of help and support so that they can have closure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is our case for today. This is our first case of the week. Of course, we have 2 more coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then on Wednesday night, we'll be back with a live stream, which is our weekly case update. And Thursday, we'll be back with our live stream, which is the Psychic Hour. So you know it. You've been listening to the Psychic Sisters here on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Apple, wherever we are. You know it. Thanks for being here, you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Kristi Brower, podcaster and professional psychic. I have spent the last 14 years honing my skills as a psychic and a healer. I work on the Purple Ocean app. You can find it in any of the app stores. And I am available every day for video and chat readings. I specialize in pattern breaking, particularly in relationships, but really in any area of your life. If you're feeling stuck and like you can't move on or you can't let something go, I am the reader for you. That is exactly what I focus on. It's what I love to do. I love to help stuck people get moving, and I've been doing it for many years and have been very successful at it and can do that for you as well. So if you are having trouble letting go of a relationship or a fear or a challenge of any kind in your life, come see me at Purple Ocean, and we will do everything we can, me and my guidance system and my intuition and you, because it's always a package deal that we work together, but we will find a way to break that pattern for you. So come see me over at Purple Ocean and let's break your patterns.